live. We are live streaming on the YouTube channel right now. And I got the one and only diamond from the Oppenheimer Project. The guy that knows, man, I got to admit, and I'm not just kissing your ass here, when I watch your channel, you got to be one of the sharpest minds on YouTube that I come across that lays out things with papers, with links, with facts. How dare you?
I know. It's like a boom. It's like my background. Jesus.
Yeah. So tell us about...
Can you hear me all right over there?
Yeah, you're good. We're all good.
Okay, cool. What's the question?
What's the question? You've been showing that super volcano. So I saw your little short video where you just straight up, well, the other one where you were talking about the earthquake out there in Vegas. You just straight up showed that at that time there's a direct causality link there in a very short video. And yeah. I've been tripping on.
Go ahead. No, you finish.
I've been tripping on the wildlife around here, and then I've been, I tried to find articles to back up what I've been seeing, and I didn't exactly find that. I found other stuff, like spiders flying all over the world with the electromagnetism, and ants, for sure, like in Africa, they've studied them, and they directly pick up the magnetic field lines where they go and remember and make mental maps out of it, evidently. And I'm wondering if these harvester ants where I live that I found out using a super magnet are collecting a lot of ferrous little tiny stones as the choice for their ant diamonds. And also they go inside at particular times of day that don't seem to correlate with every day. They know something we don't for sure.
Yeah, so in my opinion, they're probably creating their own structure that has remnant magnetism. So by using those ferrous particles, all rocks on Earth that have iron or form with iron in it, lock in the magnetic field at that time. So they're slightly magnetic, the actual stones. So maybe they're like using them to pull in a magnetic field as protection, almost like EMF protection. They make this magnetic
exactly
field cone or something.
That's exactly what I thought.
There's a cool spider out here that will climb up a tree and start spinning a web, and it comes out of its butthole and then it starts blowing in the wind. It can go 1/4 of a mile across a river, connect with a tree, and then the spider goes across the river. Like right. You find these webs in the middle of the woods that are like 1/4 mile long sideways, and you're like, how did that happen? And so it's the spider spinning like a gravity-free web, or it's magnetized and it just stays laterally, it's electrified statically, and it just moves across the river, stays above the water until it hits a tree, and then the spider goes just crazy. And that's some stuff I've only realized in my 40s.
And Darwin had no idea. He thought they were just
there you go. Balloon. So what's that all about? So do they is this article, do they just jump in the air and
they do exactly what you said. Exactly. You just described the article. Exactly what they do. They make a little balloon. It gets electromagnetically charged, and they somehow know where they're going and use it. The question is are they manipulating it to steer it?
Wow.
And if so, how the hell do they do that?
Like spiders in a spaceship. All right, Jimmy, left, go left. Yeah, that's crazy, because my information that I just shared with you is based on direct observation from me in the woods. I never saw that paper, and you have the paper. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and then see, because I was on the hunt to corroborate, or someone else mentioned that they saw or noticed that these harvester ants were collecting micrometeorites and ferrous rocks to put around as ant diamonds. And that's exactly what I thought right away is, what are they building, a little magnetic bubble for their hole? It's like right around the entrance, and they clear all the debris away. So there's nothing but those ant diamonds on a hill. and it's not, well, these aren't like the ones out where you're at where they make a big hill. They just make a little flat hill enough not to get flooded. And I thought at first those ant diamonds were for traction, but now this puts a whole new spin on the little ant city thing that I got going on there. They're quite a bit more, I guess, collectively intelligent than people give them credit.
Yeah, because the anthills I've seen, it seems to be that they're collecting quartz crystals where I am. So the quartz crystals, you probably know, are used in quartz radios, some of the first radios. And that's the actual antenna. So if they're aligning these quartz grains, maybe they're like listening to the radio in the hill. And then they add a little bit of the magnets, and that actually tunes in the radio for them. But what it could also be doing, and papers have been coming out about this recently, is that there are certain insects and animals that have these magneto detectors in their body. We know that like whales and certain birds migrate, and they're obviously using Earth's magnetism. But the papers coming out are showing that insects and many other creatures never before thought of, also including humans, have the ability, like myself. I have the ability, if you spin me around, close my eyes, I'm in a dark room, ask me to point north, and I'll point north. Do you have that ability?
No, I don't. I can't even do regular trigonometry, much less innate form of mental trigonometry. I can't do that. But yeah,
this is it's not trigonometry, Ransom. To me, it's a feeling. I know where the North Pole is, no matter where I am, usually.
Yeah.
I can feel it. I can feel it. I'm pointing right at it. I don't have to look around. I can point at it. I can feel it. I have a feeling it's right there. And I'm sure that's where the North Star will be.
Yeah. So tell us about also, I notice you're paying attention to Swan, and I'm already seeing the nutty people talking about, it's gonna do this. It's gonna come close to Earth. It's another Armageddon rock. And I hear so many of these, it's ridiculous. However, you've been talking about how bright it may be and something that we could all actually look at. Like ancient people got to see things like this in the sky, and I think they put it on a rock.
No. I don't think Swan's it's not gonna be that one. It was already predicted to have a brightness a little higher than it is right now. And what happened about 10 days ago is it got bright really quick, and then it went down a little, and now it's recovering. So right now it's at a magnitude of about 5.5, which is just at the threshold where you can see it with the naked eye, which means it'll be barely visible, and you have to be in a really dark spot. And you also have to wake up at 4 a.m. because at about 4 a.m. where we are, it's rising right here in the Northeast. And you'll see it rise up. It's about, it'll be about 30 degrees above the horizon, maybe, I don't know, a hand's width if you put it out in front of you. And just to the right of the Big Dipper at about 4 a.m. Now, it's already come above the plane of the ecliptic, and it's now going to curve around and come back down. And so we have about a 15-day window here where if the sun were to, because we have a sunspot now turning around the sun, a very active sunspot from solar cycle 25 is just cresting the limb. And for the next 7 days, that will come around the sun and face directly towards Earth. If that shoots out a flare, and even when it turns back around the other side, in 14 days, it will actually be facing the comet. And if it were to shoot a flare out then, it could re-illuminate the comet. So that's interesting news. But let's talk about Comet Atlas, because not all is lost with that comet. Now, that comet has broken apart in upwards of 24 pieces. But a paper just came out 48 to 72 hours ago that the European solar probe, its orbit is going to cross through the ion tail of Comet Atlas, which is broken apart. So now the ion tail is like more dispersed, which gives us even more opportunity. This is the first time in history of humanity, or ever, that an accident like this is going to happen, where a satellite with the proper equipment aboard to make observations of a comet tail accidentally goes through a comet tail. So that's some pretty spectacular news. And those dates, it should go through the comet tail from May 30th to June 5th. So that will be a pretty awesome week in cosmology and cometary science, when for the first time ever, we're going to accidentally have a satellite with equipment on board to do measurements go through the ion tail of a comet. Yeah, they had no idea. The odds of you calculating that out like 6 months ago would have been zero. So it's only in the last few days that they were like, we're about to go through the comet tail. This is awesome.
I don't know, Diamond.
And that's how science
You're getting
are happening today.
You're getting a little too factual, man. And, all these conspiracy theorists about every single thing about, everything has to be planned in a conspiracy theorist. You bust a lot of bubbles on your channel. I love that about your channel. And you don't even try that hard. You just go through the things you're tripping on. One last question I got for you. This might be a stupid question. I was watching just the other day, and I was thinking of you. It was an old documentary about magnetic bands on the sun snapping and throwing out a bunch of energy. I kind of threw that question at David Dubine last night. I know that the Earth has a similar magnetic sphere, or not sphere, a field on it. But does that same thing happen on Earth where you get a magnetic band snap? And if so, is there any kind of kinetic energy involved with that? Or is it only electromagnetism? Because when they show it on the sun, they're talking about, I don't know how many times bigger than the Earth this loop is, and then the amount of energy that's blasted out into space when that band snaps, or the little hoop, or whatever you want to call it. Does that happen on Earth on a smaller scale with our magnetic field? And if so, does it have kinetic energy tied to it?
Well, that's a pretty awesome question. So if you want to break it down for the layman, excuse me, let me get a little hydrated here. So there are many people that believe that the sun is operating electromagnetically similar to the terrestrial planets. And so let's just do the sun to the Earth comparison. The Earth has Earth spots, just like the sun has sunspots. So when the sun gets active, there's these dark holes in the sun that move by, and they have penumbral and umbral fields, and that's where the magnetic mixing in the magnetic field happens. That's also where those field lines and those big bubbles you're talking about occur that blast out the coronal mass ejections. So the same type of feature on the Earth would be a low pressure system or a storm, or the best way to look at it would be a hurricane. So when we have a hurricane and you have the eye of the hurricane moving across the Earth, that is the same as a sunspot. And the eye, you're looking into the surface of the Earth when you look through the eye of the storm. There's nothing in there. There's no clouds. There's a bunch of hippie chicks dancing somewhere in Florida, in about an hour, they're all going to get washed out to sea. But for that hour, they're dancing in the eye. And the same thing happens in a sunspot on the sun. When it comes across the sun, you get to look into the sun, to that cold black ferrite that's the sun. People talk about the sun, about this nuclear reactor. That's all BS. The sun is a cold, black, dead object. And the reaction in the atmosphere that we look at Earth, that we call the sun, is not the sun. That is the photosphere of the sun. It's the corona. It's the atmosphere of that cold black body. And every time we see a sunspot go by, we can actually see the actual sun. Same thing with a hurricane. So sunspots and hurricanes are very similar. So when you have a hurricane and you have the eye, if you bring that all the way up to the ionosphere, that goes all the way up. It goes up like 30 miles to space. That's what we're looking at on the sun. So the sun, you're looking at the atmosphere of the sun. A sunspot is a hurricane eye, a hole into the sun. And the same thing happens on Earth. It's just that we're not that hot here. and we have way less electrodynamics. But
And
the same
that would
magnetic
correlate
fields
to,
are coming out and all that,
so that would correlate
just
to
at
like
a lesser
Saturn,
degree.
Jupiter, Neptune, all the ones we get storms on. We're talking about the same phenomenon.
Yeah, because it's just a centrifugal force, right? Tornadoes, dust devils. These are all electromagnetic perturbations that cause that little twisting. You could get more esoteric. I mean, there has been work on water. The perfect flow of water is in a cylinder, in a spiral, and moving forward. Rivers don't move forward. They rotate and they spiral forward. Nobody knows that. But when you flush the toilet, it spirals down the hole. It's the same thing when a river goes down the stream. It's spiraling. Everything is moving in this circular motion. And so it's scalable to like everything. The blood in our veins is going through our veins in a spiral. You know, the whole solar system is moving through the Milky Way at thousands of miles an hour in a spiral. We're not doing that weird thing that you learned in high school, stationary in a plane. That's bullshit. We are ripping through space at exponential speeds, and our cheeks, they're not even pushing back like this. You know what I mean? We should be like at 9,000 Gs. Ah! But we're not.
Well, so you're telling me, well, how could you get mad at the flat Earth people whenever their school taught them that the solar system was a disk, a stationary disk in space, instead of, you know, a fluid motion like everything else, or electromagnetic motion like everything that I've ever seen is always in motion, or there's stored energy and it's not doing anything.
It's not their fault. They're just as dumb as everybody else because they were indoctrinated the same way.
All right, so you sent me some articles here, and I thought this was ironic too. I brought this up last night, so I'll just skip past it real quick. These are popping up all over the mainstream media now. Something I haven't seen in a long time. They're like, well, I think you and others like you have forced them. Well, you forced them to talk about it. They have no choice anymore. There's so many people talking about things now.
It could be, but anytime that NASA or NOAA puts out something about sunspot minimum, solar cycle minimum, we are in a solar minimum. They never, ever, ever, infinity, actually say grand solar minimum. Yeah. They just say we're in a solar minimum. And then in the article, they allude to the fact that this is the deepest solar minimum in 100 years or more. And so they're basically trying to say it without saying it. But this is not the first time that these articles have come up. About a year and a half ago, which is about a year and a half after I started the channel, you know, all the salacious types of, you know, the rags in Europe started printing like grand solar minimum, freezing the world, and blah, blah, blah. Mini ice age, mini ice age. We saw that. But now it just has a different title because they can glom back onto an old reference to the pandemic because they're using it as a pandemic tie-in. It's like, what was the title on there? Like, the sun is also going into lockdown. It's almost like they're social conditioning us for the lockdown during the grand solar minimum. It will last for 32 years.
The sun's just going to social distance us for a little while. It'll be back in a couple hundred years. Don't worry about it.
And then you put this paper up here. This is another big hit over the last 3 or 4 days. It's coming over like every type of media. You know, the Salon has one, Forbes has one, Omni, every freaking barely legitimate news source has a version of this. Scientists have puzzled. They're baffled over the North Magnetic Pole drifting for years. And now they have answers. Now, if you read all these articles, There is not a single answer in the article. It's basically like written at a 4th grade level. And their explanation is that, well, if you just scroll down a little, let's just look at some of the pictures here. It gets really embarrassing. Go a little further, and then they show these blobs. I think hopefully this paper has the blobs. Yep, there it is. Stop there. Okay, so you see 1999, it's the purple alien turned sideways. And now in 2019, it's the purple alien with pink eye and one eye. And so this is their explanation, which is not an explanation. Their explanation is that there is a magnetic blob in the earth causing this, which is almost like, I could make that up without any scientific inquiry. The magnetic blob, like what are you talking about? So we've only ever been able to drill down like 20 kilometers, which is still in the crust. We've never even been to the mantle. And they're talking about the inner and outer core and magnetic blobs. So basically they're just full of shite.
The only thing I think they got right is this shape in here. The lines, that's it. That's all they got right. And there's your Chinese communist star in the middle.
It was aliens. But what they're reading there is, so what they're doing is they're doing subsurface Bouguer anomaly or gravity anomaly type mapping. We can shoot very high intensity waves through the earth. They change speed, and then we can get these 3-dimensional topographic maps of something going on. So this is a geomagnetic graph of something going on. The blob is a hypothetical mathematical model of what's happening down there geomagnetically. It doesn't describe what's happening down there. Okay, because if I have 59 magnets all flipped in a different way and I bury them in sand and I cover it in ceramic, wrap it in silicon and all that, and I put it 800 miles away from myself, and then I try to look at it, I'm just going to get a magnetic field of a couple lines. It's not going to tell me about the 54 magnets and all the other crap going on. So they have no idea about what's going on. The paper doesn't describe anything. But what I can tell you is that I know how to describe what's going on because I can use historical paleogeologic data, and we can go into the rock record where we can have taken physical measurements of the geomagnetic field of the planet for hundreds of millions of years. And we have seen all the magnetic reversals. We've seen all the magnetic excursions. And now, more recently, we've determined that every 12,500 years, like a clock, there's a magnetic excursion. It goes bang, bang, boom, bang, bang, boom, bang, boom, boom. But the mainstream scientists are unwilling to step back and look at it from a multidisciplinary approach. You need to be a paleoclimatologist, a stratigrapher, a volcanologist, a petrologist, and on to be able to put the kind of story together that I tell, and that doesn't happen in academia. I mean, you can go talk to your colleagues, but they also don't have the same kind of background, so bless you. So it's crazy. It's like we're not learning anything, and so it's crazy. But you and I know that around 1900, the North Pole started moving towards Siberia, and it's accelerating. It's moved 1,000 miles, and it's now past the rotational pole, and maybe 10 years it will be in Siberia. And then what? Because it's going to be approaching the equator soon. And then so people are going to have to write some different articles about what's actually happening. A geomagnetic excursion. Hello.
So when does your book come out?
Which, by the way, and because I've talked about it with you, and it's on the channel. Results in mass extinctions and all kind of other stuff shit. Just the amount of UVA and UVB coming in, people all over the world that don't even have to be smart know that when they go out in the sun, it feels much hotter and it's burning your flesh more than ever before. That's because we have less magnetosphere. The magnetosphere that you were born with, if you're 40, is 15% less. And that's a lot when we're talking about dangerous cosmic radiation just plowing in and smashing into our bodies.
I was kind of wondering, so you remember that paper that you were reading about the lifespans, right? Correlated to the sunspots at the year that they were born. So
yes.
What do you think about all these kids that just got born during this little, bubble of no sunspots? Do you think all of them will have good lifespans if they stay out of the sun during no magnetic fields? I mean, what kind of mutations do you see coming? Because I know you've talked about that a lot too, how cosmic rays and energy from space drive evolution explosions, more like mutation explosions, maybe not evolution.
Well, some people are prone to die and some people are prone to excel, and it's just based on your predisposition for your genetics. I think the genetic code is Noah's Ark. So your DNA sequence that you and I have literally has all of the information that ever was up to this point on Earth, that our species, Homo sapiens sapien, is now a repository of that information. We have every iteration of everything that we ever came from.
Yeah.
As far as my lineage, your lineage is different than mine. And so you may be more prone to living in caves or high cosmic ray times in your genes, and my genes may be more towards solar max. And that's where that paper comes from. That when you are born, if there's almost no sunspots, you're going to live for a long time, up to 120 years. And if you're born when there's a lot of sunspots and high solar activity, where the KP index is high, your lifespan is drastically reduced. And that might have to do a lot with, there's hundreds, that's a whole other podcast. We could explain and hypothesize the dozens of reasons why that is going on. But it's as simple as this. If you're born when there's no sunspots, the amount, and this is my opinion, of cosmic radiation, which is information from the universe that's pouring onto the earth, is maximum. And in my opinion, that information from space is information from space. So if you are born during the highest time when you're being flooded with the Akashic record, maybe your genome is the most organized because it's that radiation that's organizing your gene. Clearly, because I truly believe in astrology, you can pinpoint how people act, what they look like, this stupid quirks based on astrology, which is the time, the date, and the place you were born, which has everything to do with solar output and solar activity. So it's all related, and we're just now putting it together like children when we think we've already learned everything in science and everything is a law. We're retards. Can I say that?
Now that you said that, everybody don't forget to go out and get swabbed and give them a COVID test to allow them to have each little piece of that sequence of the Akashic record there. Each individual little special thing that you have from your lineage, don't forget to give it to the government. Have you seen how they do the people? They put the thing right down their nose. But anyway, you had some articles here you wanted to talk about. Let me put them on there right here. Big volcano here. Don't forget to give your DNA, though. I'm just saying.
Yeah, so we've had potentially some... I thought I had your hat here. Shit. I don't know what I did with it. I could pop it on. But we've had some pretty intense eruptions over the last 48 hours. The first one I noticed was Katla in Iceland, but I have not been able to confirm this through Himawari or any other source that Iceland actually erupted. So let's just skip over that. And when I get to the bottom of what's going on there, And then shortly, about 18 to 24 hours after that, when I woke up this morning, Semeru and Ibu both erupted above 45,000 feet. They were discrete eruptions, which means that they didn't last long, but very significant, because when you get 8-9 miles above the surface of the Earth, you're entering into the stratosphere. Now, this is more of an equatorial region in Indonesia, and so the stratosphere is higher there. It's, it can be as high as 55,000 feet. Whereas up in Iceland, the stratosphere is closer to 30,000 feet. So, and once you start pumping this material into the stratosphere, then you get significant events like global cooling. It can last 1 to 3 years. The year without a summer is a good thing to talk about. Back in 1100, there were major eruptions. And for 3 years, it basically was frozen everywhere, and 30% of the population died. So it's everyone's guess that the next decade, we're waiting for that time period to happen, where we're going to get major volcanic eruptions that will literally cool the planet and destroy crops and make it very hard for society. So, and that's been our prediction from the rip, and it's developing. I mean, and because you've been watching.
But Al Gore said that I had to stop driving because it was me, man. In my big SUV. It was my fault. I ate beans and farted last week.
April. Another fascinating science fact is that the global temperature in April was the largest drop in temperature since 1986. And the second largest drop in recorded human history. And this is the UAH global temperature data from the University of Alabama, Huntsville. Recorded the second largest monthly temperature drop on Earth ever in the history of recording. So, and the first was back in 1986. So if we are in a global warming world, how could we possibly record the second largest global temperature drop in recorded history? What are the odds?
That's weird because it doesn't really say that in this article here. They left that part out. They just said it was like the second warmest on record. They didn't talk about the temperature drop afterwards. Why is that? I don't know. It must be global warming.
Well, if you want to know paleoclimatologically what happened there, in March and February, there was residual warming effects from the fires in Australia. And when you have that much wildfire and the smoke goes up, you have an actual small amount, a localized greenhouse effect. Because here, the only time it's warm at night is when the clouds are covering us. Otherwise, it's freezing cold. So if there's clouds or smoke ahead, it'll trap the heat and it'll hold it for a short period of time. And what it did was it warmed the planet warmer than it normally would for February and March during those fires. But then the fires went out with all that rain, and then we had the temperature drop and that record drop. So that's the explanation if you actually want the science. It has nothing to do with you. It's all natural, can be explained through natural climate variability. And I think I did it pretty concisely there.
I don't know what I did with the article, but I realized something, and this may be one of those really bizarre conspiracy theories. However, the X-37B took off and was missing for quite some time. During that time, there were a lot of fires on Earth. Now they're going into space and they're bragging that they're testing out a radio beam super juiced by the sun. It could beam back down on Earth a directed energy particle. That's far-fetched. However, there was a lot of weird things in that California fire, and I don't think that they can manipulate the environment like they say they can, but fire is something that has been doing it just like you talked about for a long time. So if you wanted to set a fire and push back or hold back rain or anything like that, what do you think about that kind of terraforming? Not the kind where, the super chemtrails are, they're I never bought that one too much because I know how small an airplane is compared to the planet. So even if they were putting out an ass load of little streams of whatever, the wind would blow it away. It's like an oil spill and a hurricane comes along and it's gone. And they're talking about it's going to destroy the environment for 150 years. You'll never be able to live here again. And then a hurricane comes. There's no oil anywhere to be found. It's all diluted because the planet's so big. And a lot of those flat earther people, they also don't realize that when they're talking about this little bitty camera that's getting probably it's like a flea trying to see, or a bacteria trying to see how round the basketball is on it, that it's on.
Ransom, it's even worse than that. The whole idea of scale is so incomprehensible to almost over 80% of the population. That would be like 4.7 billion people. So they can't comprehend the scale of the surface of the planet, first of all. Now, if we then go up 20 to 40,000 feet, where they're supposed to put the chemtrails that are going to come down, you would need to fly 400 million flights a day to cover less than 5% of that area. So that you would need a whole 100 days just to finally cover that space with your spray. And that would be 4 billion flights. Even if they cost $10 a flight, that's now $1 trillion a day. That's ridiculous. I mean, we could print money, but you're talking $1 trillion a day for 10 years times 365. That's a number that no one even knows how to pronounce. It's a septillion. It doesn't even exist. We've never even printed that much money, so it can't be happening.
Right. Well, what about compared to that, a bunch of fires set on purpose?
I know. You could set fires on purpose. All you need is a match or an idiot. So directed energy weapons and all that conspiracy theory then comes into question. You're like, why would they need advanced technology when all you need to do is flick a match? Remember when you and I were like, remember that game when you light people on fire with the match pack? You flick it and you go, psh, psh, and you can shoot the matches. That's all you got to do. It costs like 12 cents and you can light the whole world on fire for 12 cents. Right. So I don't think anyone's spending money on directed energy weapon project.
You just pretty much pointed out that you could probably spend $100 on 10 crackheads and give them a lighter each and do a better job than all of those planes, all of that shit. That is the most simple breakdown of that ever.
Look, if you actually got good crack, the whole North America would be lit on fire in one night. I mean, if I had the crunchy munchie, the sparkler, they would be back and it would be lit.
I know you got another interview and you got somewhere to be, but real quick, I wanted to share this. You were talking about you're going to go scam out some really cool petroglyphs again, and I'll share that real quick before you head off.
Let's take a look.
Mierdas Marcandas Canyon Trail. I probably butchered that, but whatever. There it is. And I believe these people have quite a few pictures here, but the computer froze. So how about that?
Trail mob.
That was lame. Anyway.
Yeah, so according to the description of this area, so we have a doctor's appointment tomorrow right near this area, and no, it's the next day, but we'll be at this area tomorrow, and it's supposed to have the highest concentration of petroglyphs in the shortest walking distance.
Yeah.
So in 1.8 miles, there's over 400 glyphs. And so I'll be sharing that on the channel probably in a day or two. And it's like halfway between me and you. So we could always meet up and go back again.
No doubt. Yeah, I know exactly where that is right there. And that's cool. I kind of might argue this though, because the ones here, they say there's only 20,000, but they're only counting the ones that are up on the trail. They go all the way down the side of the cliffs. There's multiple cliffs, and I shit you not, Diamond. the shape of the trail, and I know it's some kind of ritualistic trail by what they drew all along the trail, is in the shape of a lightning bolt. If you look at it from the sky, it looks like a lightning bolt. Now, why or how they put that, or if it's just on accident, I don't know. But the trail is a big
no, because listen. I paid for a private tour at Mesa Prieta, which is north of Petroglyph National Monument. It's only 2 hours from here, south. It's just past Ghost Ranch. But we paid for a private tour at Mesa Prieta, and the main Petroglyph trail is a lightning bolt that goes up the mountain in a lightning bolt along, and each time you get to a change is the most important glyph. And so it's like a book. It's like a book. So I bet you
I got some ones I want to show you.
There.
There's some that I want to show you because nobody knows about them, because you have to walk off the cliff and kind of, be a little dangerous and climb down the side, and you're not supposed to. But it's really easy, especially for a mountain climber. You'll probably hop down there before anybody. But yeah, they're all on the side, and there's DNA there. And not only that, the rock looks like a head, like an Easter Island head. That it's all
a moai. Ooh.
That'll be cool. But anyway, thanks for coming on. It's Diamond from the Oppenheimer Ranch and Magnetic Reversal News. Thanks for coming on. Awesome.
Thanks for having me.